we are, as always, we promise to discuss issues from all around the world. Earlier this year, we had folks joining us from Washington, D.C., from New York, from Tokyo, from different parts of the world. But today, we have a very special guest, and I mean it in every sense of this word. This is a person who has been close to my heart. I consider him as my amigo, my habibi, my brother. And of course, last week, as big developments happened in Syria, and finally, Isqat al-Nizam, a new regime, new era opening up. I thought he's the best person to talk to. He's not a politician. He's not politically invested. He's not partisan. He's a medical doctor. He has been at the forefront of all sorts of humanitarian crises, helping with refugees of ISIS and Daesh. And of course, right now, finalizing, or inshallah, finalizing his studies in specializing in trauma. So, Dr. Azam Sheikh Al Souk, thank you very much, Habibi, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Richard, for having me. It's always a pleasure and nice moments to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. Azam, my brother, just for the purpose of people to understand where you're coming from. So obviously I clarified that you're not a politician, you're not politically invested. And the reason I say is because the situation is very tense. You know, you're hearing different things. Everyone is trying to push their agenda, etc. So that's why I felt you're a perfect person, perhaps more perfect than some of the experts out there. Azam, can you tell a little bit more about your own personal journey to the degree that you're obviously comfortable with? I know things have been very traumatic for a lot of our Syrian brothers and sisters throughout the years. More than a decade of civil war. Many people paid the price, some the ultimate price. At least, thank God, in your case, Azam, I've seen you thriving, and inshallah, God willing, I'll see you contributing more to your country. So, can you tell us a little bit about your own background, Azam?
So, I've been living almost all of my life in Syria until 2021, where I decided to continue my post-medical studies in Germany, just to do my specialization as a first aim, and to be honest, is to flee from the fear of being conscripted in the military, because it's compulsory in Syria, and if you were taken, then you are someone that you might have to be in a situation where you need to kill your own people, for the sake of the government. So I decided the best way to get. I didn't want to leave Syria. If I had the chance to stay, I would have stayed. And I'm not a refugee. I didn't even apply for a refugee status or something like that. But I tried to follow my specialization through my savings and my funds, and the aim was to end it and then to get back to Syria and to work in Syria. But this is why there's an advantage that you can pay an exemption, and then you can be exempted from the military service, when only under the condition that you left the country for a couple of years. I would say I was raised in a very typical Syrian family, where my both parents are teachers in schools, and from the middle class. I can say that I was in touch with most of the type of communities in Syria, and I come originally from the city of Homs, which is in the middle of the country.
Oh my God!
It was also one of the most famous conflict areas, and it was also named after the capital of the revolution, because of how much of events that happened that actually affected the course also of the political community and change events. And it was even the city where after Homs was taken by the rebel in the last couple of days, it was the city where then even Bashar al-Assad decided, then okay, now it's time to leave. Now I don't have any chance more. Also from the geographical location, because it connects the different parts of Syria.
Damascus to Aleppo, right? So it cuts it down, and Damascus to Latakia. So it's essentially the heartland of Syria.
Exactly, it's exactly as you described. I had also that chance because I worked since the beginning of the revolution. To be honest, I was very enthusiastic. I wanted to be part of this change, and I was very, very active in the peaceful movement, in the demonstrations that went on the streets and wanted to claim for freedom. But then when the things started to turn in the military direction and in the conflict, I said, I don't think this is now the right way. So I went a little bit back, and I took the step towards the humanitarian work. And I said, okay, let's look what we can improve on the other levels. I joined the paramedics. I worked with war injuries, and then also with organizations, local organizations that made initiatives on the community level to improve the services in the city. I established like a team that works to connect the people who were forcibly internally displaced to get to access to human rights and to services. And then I ended up also in the United Nations. And in the United Nations, I worked, it was also something specific that I worked in the office in Northeast Syria, where it's a very, very different area in types, in terms of
Syria. So this is the Kurdish-controlled areas right now by SDF?
This is the area that was controlled by the SDF, where also the biggest concentration also of the Kurds, who are also part of the Syrian community. They make up 8 to 10% of the Syrian community. And I worked there for 3 years, witnessing things that I have never imagined that I would be facing there, where also large concentration camps for refugees, where I remember when I first came in 2016 to the area, it was a flux of the Iraqi refugees who were fleeing Iraq because of Daesh. It was a conflict between ISIS and because of the U.S. and coalition air forces who were also making airstrikes, and was a lot of life loss. And I remember when I entered, the number of the refugees in the camp was 10,000. And when I left from Qamishli, I returned to Homs in 2019. It was 73,000 people in the camp. Wow. Like how
almost, yeah.
Exactly, and but this time was more from the Syrian population, like from the people who fled from the Syrian area, aside from the families of the combatants who were also like in a separate part of the camp, and with a multinational from every single place in the world. So yes, I mean, I don't know if this gives like if this is enough introduction now. I'm what I would.
Asam, you remind me of myself. Like when people ask me a question, I give suddenly the whole answer right away. It's like, whoa, wait! I still have to ask you a question. Let's go a little bit back. So thank you for making me feel what people feel with me. It's like Richard, you know. There's this joke with Dr. Kissinger, the diplomat of the 20th century. He said, "Do you have more questions for my answers?" Right? It's like he has ready answers. Like, do you want to give me the questions? Like, brother, to the degree again that you're comfortable to share, can we rewind a little bit to the earlier years? Because as you know, I mean, my first book actually was on the Arab uprising, so the Jabhat al-Nusra, all the earlier years I covered. Obviously, that will be relevant as we discuss the Jolani and the new emerging regime in Syria. But you see, how should I put it? You know, before the Arab uprisings and all, you know, a lot of us, we had family members who went to Syria, visited Syria. Amazing stories, beautiful country. I mean, unfortunately, I never had the chance to go to Syria, but God willing, inshallah, we'll fix that. So actually, we were surprised by how things turned out from the outside, because we heard of a country which is a cultural and religious mosaic, a very multicultural, very advanced society, very sophisticated society, really the heartland of Islam at some point in time, the efflorescence of culture and civilization. And let's be honest, the disgraced dictator Assad at some point was I think Mahbub was the way he was called, like the darling or something. Like there were a lot of these positive views. Were you yourself surprised by how strong and violent and brutal the hammer came down when the revolution started? Was that a surprise to you? Because you said at first you were hoping that there'll be a reform, something like that. Can you tell us a little bit about the earlier days and years for
Yeah,
that matter? Yeah, and then how it took a very dark
yeah,
turn.
of course. The people who knew who Bashar al-Assad's father was,
Yeah,
I think, and who have also heard
Hafiz.
the
Yeah,
story
yeah,
of Hafiz. And actually, Hafiz took control after a coup in 1970. And he ruled until he died in 2000, where Bashar al-Assad changed the constitution in 5 minutes in the parliament, so that they changed the age, because there was an age determinant for
yeah.
who's eligible to make himself as a candidate for presidency. And then so they fit the constitution to fit his age. Like
Right.
it was, I think minimum is 40 or something, and they made it like 34 or something, like how exactly
It's
what
almost
his
your
age
age.
was.
Almost your age,
Yeah,
bro. Oh wow, creepy. Yeah.
that was exactly like to fit in his age, and then he took control. I think it is what was surprising is that people had some hopes that he
Yeah.
might be a little bit softer than his
Yeah.
father, like okay, he might be bring some change with him. But those who were really informed how the regime was
Yeah.
structured, what type of power that keeps the regime in place, I think they have seen it also from the beginning that it was not going to be so easy. The amount of destruction and of torture and of human rights violations, war crimes, I think it was above the expectations, I can admit.
Right. Yeah.
And it was a little bit frustrating also. What was really frustrating for the people, and especially when I always try to talk about the people who share the same ambition as myself, is that how the conflict or how the whole situation turned from a national uprising, peaceful movement, to an international conflict. All type of international powers were suddenly very heavily
Yeah.
involved in the Syrian situation, where we felt in a point that we have no role anymore. You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
it
You
doesn't
lost your
make a difference.
agency. You're no longer in charge of your own country. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't have anything. We don't have influence. We're not even like a stakeholder anymore as a normal population. The people who have things, who can change or who can play, are the people who are backed by some of the external powers. And there were so many. And what was really specific in Syria is that there were even some international factors who have very similar agendas in somewhere out of Syria, for example. But in Syria, they had their agreement. Like even Turkey and Russia, for example, they have their common interests
Right.
in other regions of the world, and they go in the same aims. But in Syria, it was like totally different.
Yeah.
And we were the who was sacrificed, in this power game. But if you look at earlier, as I said, what and the other thing is that there was very weak media in the time of
Yeah.
Hafiz al-Assad. So
Yeah.
so that what happened in that time, the crimes that happened, the demolishing of the city of Hama, killing more as 30,000 people, like after a small uprising in 1982, this didn't come out so heavily. It was like words which was spread mouth to mouth, but there were no social media at that time, so people maybe didn't hear a lot about what's going on as when the things started. But if you look how Bashar dealt with the situation, I don't think it was a different way as what Hafiz al-Assad did. And I think that you can also count I feel what I feel what happened in the last days was extraordinary, not because it changed the situation from 2000 until now, but because it changed it from 1970 until now. These
Right.
are 54 years, and in these years you have people who were born and die like in this area, and they didn't know anything other than an Assad family.
Right. Yeah, half a century is a very, very long time. One of the longest lasting political dynasties anywhere in the world. The House of Assad, if we shall put it that way. Um, um, Azam, one of the things that is getting a lot of attention all around the world right now is all of these prisoners who are getting freed right now, and the horrific, horrific scenes. Again, I agree with you that almost everyone was shocked by the brutality of the crackdown. It went almost Gaddafi level, I would say, at some point. Like, my goodness. I mean, Gaddafi was crazy. We all knew that, right? But it's like, no, Syria will be different and all of that. Um, but now with the the horrific scenes in prisons, some people still surviving decades in prison first for the first time seeing the sun. My goodness, and thanking God. And I mean, these are scenes that are like beyond human comprehension, if I can put it that way. Um, was this really, from your understanding, probably one of the most brutal, if not the most brutal regime of the modern times? I mean, again, I can talk about many. I've been to North Korea, right? I've been to China. I've been to many authoritarian countries, but this is like really, really next level. And the reason why I say this, Azam, is I'll tell you what. I don't know if you remember, Assad was in Beijing, China, the other year, right? And my Chinese friends were telling me, I remember this conversation. I was in a conference in Singapore. They said, "Oh my goodness, my people in China." I mean, this is a Chinese who moved to the U.S. because he was unhappy. He said, "Look at my people. They're treating the Assads like celebrities, right? Because the wife is a fashion designer from London. He's an ophthalmologist from London. He speaks English, not as good as you, obviously." But yeah, he has this image of very posh and secular, and that fooled a lot of people, didn't it? That made people, oh, look at him. He's not like a crazy extremist. He's like us, Western, looks nice and all. And that's why I think it's good that people are seeing that look, being clean shaven and looking at doesn't say anything about the humanity of your regime.
It's 100% true. The only brutal, I think the level of criminality that I can compare is only the era of the Nazis in the modern time. Like, not any other regime. They were, what happened, and look, Richard, look at the numbers, look at the numbers. Since the beginning of the conflict, you have, under different estimations, from 500 to 600,000 people killed through the conflict in Syria out of a 21 million population. That's a lot. That's 3% of your own population.
3%. That's a lot. That's like 9-10 million people if this were U.S. population, right? Yeah.
You have the worst worldwide humanitarian crisis in the 21st century, with 7 million internally displaced and 6 million externally displaced people. You have more than 50%. That means you have more than 50% of your population killed, forcibly displaced, or in the prisons. And in the prisons, and now, and this is this is the sad. This is part of the sad story that many people don't know even now. Yesterday, people started to publish news that, okay, now I can say that my father, my son, my wife are dead because the search in the prisons has finished. They didn't know, they didn't have a clue that the people are missing, and people had always hope, okay, maybe they will get out like the people who were liberated in the last days. Richard, there were people who got out of the prisons now and who still think that Hafiz al-Assad is in power.
Right.
He died in 2000. They still think he's in power now. There were people who thought that Saddam Hussein, who died in 2004, he was the one who liberated them. They didn't have a clue. You have people who are so isolated, so
out of touch with reality. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's like another reality. They're living in a world other than our world, and I don't know if it is. I really don't know. I'm really honest now. I
Yeah.
don't know if the world doesn't know about that, or it's just a hypocrisy, and everyone knows how the situation. Because this, the photos of Caesar. If you heard about, this is what the photos who
Yeah.
were the reason why the U.S. made the sanctions.
Yeah,
Or
26,000 pictures from prison that was
that
smuggled to the United States. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And if the people, they know, but but it's always about the interest, and it's a very little about what really human rights counts. And it was not a long time now ago since some even of the European countries were really considering that they re-established their relationships with the Assad regime, like Italy, for example. He was very welcomed even in the Arab countries who were also part of at the beginning of the revolution, who were fighting him. And then they said, okay, now it's a good time, then we can maybe make some relations. It's very difficult. The world, I think it is always not as imaginable as when you live under and as you see in your eyes, but it's still a catastrophe. It's still a catastrophe. And the brutality, and what, 150,000 people who were missing. There are 150,000
missing. Oh.
families who didn't know. 150,000, what, you have 150,000 family who didn't know where are their relatives. You have children who were born with their prisoned mothers in the prison, and
Most likely
who
raped,
don't.
or some of them were raped. I mean, these were products of rape, probably. Yeah.
I think some of them. I cannot be sure of the sources, but I also read some articles that there were people who were raped, and they have children also from different fathers in the prison, and then but the kids, they don't know what's the other. They know what a bowl is, that they cannot connect to the world now that we are living in. I was myself. I was detained. But sometimes I feel ashamed to talk about, like, if I suffered, because when I see how the people suffered here, I feel like
it doesn't compare. It doesn't compare. Yeah.
It doesn't compare.
It doesn't compare, but the fact that if these things, horrible things, could even happen to people like you, Azam, like a fine, nice gentleman 10 years ago, you were like a guy in your 20s. You were just a medical student back then, right?
I was a medical student. I was in my third study year, and I was going to attend a training course in Lebanon, and then at the borders. And I was moving freely. I was one of the people who really didn't fear, because there were a lot of people that they had restricted movements. They had feel a lot of fear from the checkpoints, because there were a lot of people who were arrested without any kind of evidence, without nothing. So I didn't expect it at all. And then I was at the borders, and then at the borders, the border control told me, okay, you should come with us now. And then they took me I stayed one night in a cell at the borders. I didn't have a clue why I'm being detained. And then the next day I was transferred to the General Investigation Agency in Damascus, where they interrogated me for 4 times. And with interrogation, that means torture. It's not a normal interrogation. They ask you some questions, and then they start to torture you until you give them the answer that they want you to give. They're not interested in the truth. When they ask, they don't want to have it's like a checklist. Okay, the president should check these things, and when they don't check these things, then I need to torture them. The problem is, when you check these things, it will be then very, very hard after that to get out. There's no way out, because. So I tried to resist, and I didn't. And I didn't say what I didn't do, and what my charge was, is that they were accusing me that I am collecting the youth, young, intelligent people in Syria to make a party, to make an opposition party. They didn't even charge me with what has to do with the conflict or with the fighting. And I didn't do that. If I did it, I wouldn't have a problem to say that I did that. But I didn't do that because I know I cannot do that under such a government. But even though I was heavily tortured, and then at the fourth time, they cuffed my hands and my feet together, and then they put it like in a chain, which was hooked up in a roof, and then they raised me, like they pulled me up with this chain, so that's my whole body weight is in my hands and in my ankles. And then I wasn't able to write after I was released for 6 months. And I still remember the military personnel who, when I was released, I stayed 19 days. And then I was released by the judge, who looked at my file and he said, "Doctor, why are you detained?" I told him, "Go ask the security. Go ask them. I don't know why I was detained and what I was tortured." He told me, "Did you do this and this and this?" I said, "No, I didn't do this and this and this. And whatever here is in the file is because I was heavily tortured, and see the signs." And then the judge released me. But I remember the military personnel who gave me my stuff when I was released, and he told me, "Look, sign your name." And then I tried to sign my name, but then I couldn't because my hand, the nerves in my wrist were heavily injured, and I could not. Damage. And then so he started laughing at me, and then he started calling his colleagues and saying, "Look, a doctor who cannot write his name." This is the type of mentality that ruled us, Richard, for 54 years. Yeah. It's something that I cannot, whatever I say, I cannot describe it enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that was another reason that I felt you're the perfect person to talk to, because I know that you even have a first-hand experience of, having a brush with the regime, if I can put it that way, as mildly as I can. So obviously after 2016, the tide turned in favor of the regime, with obviously the help of its allies, among other things. Were you surprised by how suddenly things fell apart? Because as you were mentioning, we know that some Khaliji countries were already making outreach to him. Even the West was making outreach to him. He was being rehabilitated within the Arab League, among other things. Everyone said, "Okay, this is it. It's over. Horrible, but it is it." Were you surprised by how things fell apart? Because it was just so fast. It was just so fast, right? And once your home city of, Homs was taken over, everyone realized, okay, it's really game over. Because Damascus is really separated from the home base in Latakia and Tartus, those areas, yeah.
It was absolutely a very, very big surprise, It was... I don't think there was... even the best analyst would never have expected such a thing to come.
Yeah.
And I think this is part of the beautiness of what happened. And I even talked to my friends now in Homs, who are like even in touch with some of the groups who fought to liberate the areas.
Right.
And they told them that their original plan was just because I don't know exactly what was the exact translation in English, but the military process, they called it like invasion prevention or something like that. The military process of the opposition. So the first aim, they wanted only just to take some villages around the area that they already controlled in northwest Syria. But then as they started the fight, they were seeing like they're advancing real fast, and they are able to liberate more and more, and then they reached Aleppo, and then they continued. So even the people themselves who did that, they hadn't expected that they will do that in such a tempo.
Yeah.
And that the demolition, or how the regime has fallen so hard and so fast, was also not expected. I believe even that, although I don't believe in the conspiracy theory, but I believe that the international investigation agencies, they were informed, of course, that I think that there is like a movement going through now, but I don't think that they even have expected that this will go so fast. And this is why I think if you monitor now how the different actors are reacting, they're being like a little bit slow, and they're like, okay, they're following now, and then
catch up.
okay,
They're in a catch up mode, Azam. Yeah, everyone is in a catch up mode. It's fascinating to see powers, regional and world powers themselves scratching their head. That's why conspiracy theories come in, right? Usually when something is so confounding, oh, there must be something dark. But sometimes that's how history happens. Just things fall apart, just like that, like a house of cards. But I want to ask you a little bit about this because were you in touch with your friends and families in Homs once they got Aleppo, the HTS forces? Because that was the next big thing, right? If Homs falls, it's over. And then also, Azam, may I ask you, what is also your assessment of the Assad regime's forces in the final moments? Because one of the things we keep on hearing is that it became so corrupt and hollowed out. There was even a narco politics network coming out. Keptagon, I mean, you're a doctor yourself, became kind of like an industry. I mean, this was like almost like Mexican cartel in charge. Exactly. And then suddenly the cartel people said, okay, a bigger one is coming in. Let's, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not your usual like state regime and all. It was totally falling apart from within. It was rotting from within.
You know, the best thing to describe it is that we used to say in Syria that Syria now is more like Assad's farm. It's like a farm. It's like he's running a farm and he's not running the state or the country. The aim of every single governmental structure is to keep the benefit of al-Assad and his family. You know, this is how the things were going. The problem, one of the main problem, and that is rooted to his father, and he kept doing that and enforced that, is that you know, there's a diversity in Syria. If you break down the community, you would find that the Syrian community is composed from around 58% Muslim Sunnis. Right. You have 13% from 80 to 85. You have like around 12 to 13% Alawite, who Bashar al-Assad and his family and the people mostly living in the mountains and in the coastal areas who are Alawite, and who al-Assad's family came from. And you have like around 5% Christians, and minor groups also of Druze who are in the southern western area in Suwaida, near from Palestine and Lebanon and Jordan borders. What he did is that, and what the father began to do is that he started to convince, okay, I'm in power, that means now Alawites are in power. Okay, that means we should reinforce our power, and he started to eliminate and to get out all the other sectarial components from all the decision-making positions.
If so you kind look of the now reverse of Saddam, right? Because in the case of Saddam, in a Shia majority country of Iraq, he made the entire regime and security forces Sunni, right? So the sectarianization of the regime is what happened.
Although I think that it was also what Saddam did, but I think that the percentage in Iraq is a little bit similar. I think, I don't know how exactly, but I don't think it is more than 55 to 45, I don't know. But in Syria, you're talking about a really, really minor group, you know? You're talking about 13% who are ruling, and not even the 13, like there are a small group of these sectarian group who were ruling the country for all this time, and he kept convincing them, okay, this is our opportunity. And the moment we are away from the power, you will be slaughtered by those extremists. And he kept forcing on these ideas until a considerant part of this minority became really in power and became really involved in the killing and in the crimes because of their situation in the army and the security forces. And unfortunately, they are now very afraid to pay the price, and they have a lot of consideration. They're thinking, okay, is there going to be a revenge? Because they know that there have been a lot of their own people who were really invested in or heavily involved. But I think what the groups now are trying to do, like HTS and also the opposition forces who fought, they're trying, and now and the new governmental structures trying to give a lot of assertions that there will be no revenge, that we will invest in a real judicial system, and everything will be through the courts. Only the people who really committed crimes and evidence based will be punished, but there will be no one allowed to harm you and to go to the civilians and to turn the situation now to a sectarian issue. So the people, I would say, even the Alawites, they suffered. They even suffered from the regime, but they were misinformed in a way that they were the support group, because they thought, even in Tveda Ora, what was that? Like two ways. Either I support, or I support the regime and I keep backing Bashar al-Assad, or I will be eliminated. So they kept, and now they are also surprising when they are saying how the people are, how the people are treating them with dignity, how they are coming now in the mindset that we are hoping to make a state. And that we want to have equal rights. We want Syria is for all the people. It's not only for us. Even if we are the majority, we will keep the rights of everyone. We need to build the country together. And now even now the cities, the cities who were the stronghold of Al-Assad, they also now went up, expressing their acceptance for the change and that they got rid of the dictator. I'm not really I'm not now in a favor, or I'm not invested, or I don't think, or I'm not supporting or looking, okay, they will be the perfect replacement and everything will be good. But I'm really optimistic in the terms that we have an era behind us, and there is a common understanding that we want a better future.
Right.
And I really want the people and everyone in Syria and out Syria just to have a little bit of patience and to give time to the things and not to rush it. It's very complicated after such an intense international conflict that happened in Syria, and such a dictatorship regime, very Soviet shaped, after 54 years, to make
style, almost Stalinist, very Stalinist,
to make a rapid change. It's very different to do that fast. And what I really wish is to have the hands of the external powers in this time a little bit off Syria. Let the Syrians do their business. Let they build their country. Observe them. Be ready to support them. Try to make diplomatic relationships, to open a little bit the aspects for the Syrian people, for the government. This will be a very also good grounds if you want to promote refugees' returns. But don't rush the things, and don't make very high expectations and then put obstacles in the way.
That's a perfect way to go to just the final part of this conversation. I know, Azam, you have a lot to take care of. What gives you hope that first of all, I'm very glad, Azam, that you clarified that the first thing for a better future is you get rid of the bad thing, right? Once the bad thing is gone, of course, at least opportunities open. The reason I say this, Azam, is because you're hearing all of these people, all of these smart thinking. I mean, all of this, I'm too smart for school people saying, oh, Syria will be the next Libya. Oh my goodness, these Al Qaeda people will destroy the country. Look at all the minorities. And what I'm saying is that it's not like Syrians don't know the challenge. It's not like anyone is pretending that this will be an easy transition. Everyone knows how difficult this will be. But in a way, I think that's what we both share, precisely because we all know how things went wrong in Libya, in other countries, unfortunately, even to a certain degree in Iraq. That's why everyone is trying very hard. Obviously, some of the HTS leadership are currently under sanctions. Some of them are on terrorist list. One argument that is coming up in Western circles is, should there be a recognition and redesignation, because Syria cannot rebuild if there are sanctions, right? Those sanctions will have to be removed so that companies can come in, including Turkish companies. I know you said external power should not intervene, but brother, I've been to Turkey a lot of times throughout the past decade. You know, for everything I can criticize about Erdogan and the AKP and everything, they have hosted many of your great people. Very difficult conditions, right? I think Turkey has tried its best. I mean, it's not a rich country; it has its own challenges, but it has hosted you people, and I think Turkey has a direct interest in success and reconstruction of Syria, right? How do you feel about that? That hopefully sanctions will be removed, reconstruction will move forward. Because I saw estimates from 200 billion to 1 trillion for reconstruction
Mm,
of Syria. It's huge.
yeah.
It's a big,
Mm.
beautiful country, but it needs that investment.
That's absolutely 100% true. I think we have the benefit of former experiences. I
Yeah.
think the people are really aware, and they're looking what happened in the other countries, and they're trying to be extra careful to take the things slowly in the right direction, to also be aware from contra revolutions, like from the when the powers, when the people who were in power, and then they went, and then they tried to get back in another way and to steal the
Oh yeah,
revolution,
counter
and that happened.
revolution. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Counter revolution, exactly. I think that I don't like to be naive.
Yeah.
I don't like to raise my expectations, and I don't think that what is now to come is easy. The years to come will not be easy for the Syrians, for sure. There is a lot of need to heal, to start working to repair what has been damaged. But what I'm optimistic about, Richard, is that they are number. It's not a small number of Syrian intellectual, of people who really, the German government has now like made some of the announcement. They have fears now, for example, that the doctors, there's like around 6,000 doctors who are now on their jobs in Germany, that if they return now,
There
that
will
the
be a
health
crisis in the healthcare system, right? Like us Filipinos, most of the nurses and all in the USSR. So if we leave those countries, they're in trouble. Yeah.
you're right. And there are like a lot more, and in all the countries, and even in Syria itself, that they didn't have a room. They were not allowed to invest their talent, their
Yeah.
experiences, to bring up the country with their resources. What I hope is that for those people, that in the next time there would be a little bit more room, and only if we have a little bit of stability, a little bit of freedom of speech, of more communication, more openness, more understanding of the values and respect, that okay, these are, I know, because of the former terrorist experiences that
Yeah.
we see in the world, that there are a lot of fears. But it's a different. And not everyone who has like a long beard, or like who look different, and have a little bit of different like type of value, that means that okay, let us prejudge and say okay, those are really terrorists. Um, I think let us just keep when we wait, when we give time, and when we enforce that, okay, if the things are going really in the right way, and we are establishing a modern state built on giving access to rights to all the people, in the country, striving to bring up also stability in the region. I can also understand how many countries have their own fears, because this constant instability, it brings also instability to the other countries. And I think now it's time, just to give a little bit room and peace to build. So that's what I'm hoping with my friends, with my colleagues, to have patience. And even now, if a lot of things that are going on maybe are not satisfying for us, but that doesn't mean that we should now come to an end. Okay, look, let us put everything upside down now, and it's not working. Patience is the key for the next time. And as I said, I hope. I hope just that we use this positive support, like what comes from as external help in terms of expertise, of economic opportunities. It would be perfect, but I hope also that a few political influence to set the country under another mandate or another type of colonization. This is not what the Syrian people want, and this is not what they fought, and they lost their blood and flesh for it.
Sabr, no? More patience. That's what you believe in, brother. Last point. So obviously you were talking about all of these great Syrians all around the world. Doctors, professors, intellectuals. You're going back, right? Eventually, all of you. Inshallah. You want to go back and help your country to rebuild it.
Richard, imagine, believe it or not, even I was tortured by Assad, but through all these, I've been now in Germany since 3 years. Every year I went back to Syria.
Yeah.
I went back, I visited, I was there, I made contact with my community. I don't want to, because I believe that if everyone just left his spot and went for a brighter future, who will bring the change, Who will bring the change? So even if Al-Assad was to stay, I was even thinking to get back with all the fears. But now I'm really rushed. I just want the moment that I finish now my study just to get back to work.
Perfect timing for you. Perfect timing.
I'm really thinking now, even to I'm trying even to help from this moment through online, to even to provide psychological aid to support the people with my expertise in the way that I can, and I think a lot of people would do. If you look at the Syrian communities who left the country, you see how quick they try to build themselves, because they don't like to get aid. Like Syrians, we say we don't like the not the upper hand, the underhand. Don't like want always to provide, to product, to be, and as long as a possibility is there to do that, I think they will be doing that. I hope that the countries who had problems and who have been vocal in the press because of the load of the refugees, that when we get back to our countries, that they don't regret it.
On that cautiously hopeful note, no one is naive here. Everyone knows the degree of challenge. But Azam, let me tell you this little thing I can say on my part. You are an inspiration, brother, to countless people, including to yours truly. Believe me, Azam, every time I feel the world is so overwhelming, or things are getting difficult, or I get frustrated, whether politics here in Asia or in the US or whatsoever, I think of people like you who continue to fight for a better future against all odds. And now, thank God, there's an opening, there's a new horizon. And I'm glad to see that you will be part of that reconstruction project, brother. Continue to inspire us. Continue to stay awesome. Maraming salamat. In Tagalog, we say thank you so much, and I hope we can catch up in the future again in person here with even more good news and more concrete developments as things happen in Syria. I know it's still very early, so it's good that we kept things on a cautiously optimistic note before more information comes in. Have a great day, amigo.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you for having me, and I'm really happy to speak to your audience, even if It is. I know it's worldwide, and
Yeah.
maybe I don't know how much of them are really concerned of the issues of our region. But I'm indeed happy and interested to talk to them. Thank you very much to
Thank
give
you,
me the
thank you. I
chance.
think people
Also,
are always happy when good things happen, including, of course, just the news came in as we were discussed. The South Korean president got impeached after trying to abuse the
oh,
constitution and push for a martial law. So another bad guy goes
good.
down. So interesting year, interesting year. Hopefully, inshallah, even a better year next year for forces of democracy, freedom, and humanity. More
Um,
power to you, brother. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Yep, na-impeach yung South Korean